So what you can see the verse on my screen, right?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, perfect. Let's start. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Yam Pravrjetamअनुपेतमपेतकृत्यं Tvaipaayano Virahaka Tara Aju Ava Putreti Tanmayatayo Taravovinedustam Sarvabhutarudayam Mudimanatosmi. So today we are going to discuss 39th verse of 11th chapter of first canto. So let's start. Tamme nire balamudhaha strainam chanuvratam raha Apramana-vidho bhartur Ishwaram matayo yatha Tamme nire balamudha strainam chanuvratam raha Apramana-vidho bhartur Ishwaram matayo yatha Tamme nire balamudha strainam chanuvratam raha Apramana-vidho bhartur Ishwaram matayo yatha. So word by word translation. Tam, unto Lord Krishna, menire, took it for granted. Abalaha, delicate. Mudha, because of simplicity. Straina, one who is dominated by his wife. Cha, also. Anuvratam, follower. Raha, lonely place. Apramana vidha, unaware of the extent of glories. Bhartur, of their husband. Ishwaram, the supreme controller. Matayaha, thesis. Yatha, as it is. Translation. The simple and delicate women truly thought that Lord Krishna, their beloved husband, followed them and was dominated by them. They were unaware of the extent of the glories of their husband, as the atheists are unaware of him as the supreme controller. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Even the transcendental wives of Lord Krishna did not know completely the unfathomable glories of the Lord. This ignorance is not mundane because there is some action of the internal potency of the Lord in the exchange of feelings between Him and His eternal associates. The Lord exchanges transcendental relations in 5 ways as proprietor, master, friend, son, and lover. And in each of these pastimes, he plays fully by the potency of Yogamaya, the internal potency. He plays exactly like an equal friend with the cowherd boys or even with friends like Arjuna. He plays exactly like a son in the presence of Yashoda Mata. He plays exactly like a lover in the presence of the cowherd damsels. And he plays exactly like a husband in the presence of the queens of Dwarka. Such devotees of the Lord never think of the Lord as the Supreme, but think of Him exactly as a common friend, a pet son, or a lover, or husband, very much dear to heart and soul. That is the relation between the Lord and His transcendental devotees, who act as His associates in the supreme in the spiritual sky, where there are innumerable Vaikuntha planets. When the Lord descends, He does so along with His entourage to display a complete picture of the transcendental world, where a pure love and devotion for the Lord prevail without any mundane tinge of lording it over the creation of the Lord. Such devotees of the Lord are all liberated souls, perfect representations of the marginal or internal potency in complete negation of the influence of the external potency. The wives of Lord Krishna were made to forget the immeasurable glories of the Lord by the internal potency, so that there might not be any flaw of exchange, and they took it for granted that the Lord was a hen-pecked husband, always following them in lonely places. In other words, even the personal associates of the Lord do not know perfectly well. So, what do the thesis writers or mental speculators know about the transcendental glories of the Lord? The mental speculators present different theses as to his becoming the cause of the creation, the ingredients of the creation, or the material and efficient causes of the creation, etc. But all this is but partial knowledge about the Lord. Factually, they are as ignorant as the common man. The Lord can be known by the mercy of the Lord only, and by no other means. But since the dealings of the Lord with his wives are based on pure transcendental love and devotion, the wives are all on the transcendental plane without material contamination. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the first canto, 11th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Lord Krishna's entrance into Dwarka. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Let's chant the verse again. Tamme nire balamudha strainam chanuvratam raha apramana vido bhartur ishwaram matayo yatha. Translation: the simple and delicate women truly thought that Lord Krishna, their beloved husband, followed them and was dominated by them. They were unaware of the extent of the glories of their husband, as the atheists are unaware of him as the supreme controller. Let's chant our Mangala Charana and then we will start our discussions. ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरोन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणरघुनाथान्वितं त्वं सजीवं स अद्वैतं स अवधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्री राधा कृष्ण पादान् सहगण ललिता श्री विशाखान्वितांश्च। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी ऋषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। नम ओं विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवास आदि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे, हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे, हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे. So, this is the last verse of this chapter. The Lord is entering in Dwarka, and it's a very important verse for us to understand, to meditate on the glories of the Lord. And the most important is Lord himself. He is telling us here. It's something great learning for the devotees, that the godhood of the Lord is inferior to the loving exchanges between him and his devotees. Very, very important point we all need to understand here. So, as we will discuss about the what are all the supremacy of the Lord, and then how he follows all the rules he has created, how he confirms that in Bhagavad Gita. But more importantly, we will go back to the prayers we just discussed in the 8th chapter, prayers of Queen Kunti, and what she says here before his departure from Hastinapur, and then what Queen Kunti says, what she describes here. Namaste Purusham Tvadyamishwaram Prakrute Param Laksham Sarvabhutanam Antarbahiravastitam. So that's the verse here. Yeah. What she says, I offer my obeisances unto you because you are the original personality and are unaffected by the qualities of the material world. You are existing both within and without everything, yet you are invisible to all. So, his Lord is acting as a perfect husband, but he is still the Supreme Lord. He doesn't get influenced by his own potency. That is his supremacy. And then in the next verse, Queen Kunti, what she says, very important word here, avyayam maya javanika channam arnya adokshajam avyayam na lakshase mudadrisha nato natyadharo yatha. Being beyond the range of limited sense perception, you are the eternally irreproachable factor, covered by the curtain of deluding energy. You are invisible to the foolish observer, exactly as an actor dressed as a player is not recognized. Such a powerful verse this is. You are eternally irreproachable, factor covered by the curtain of deluding energy. Such a beautiful prayer it is. And then in the next verse she is saying that you yourself descend to propagate the transcendental science of devotional service. So she is saying here, in his Leela, as we all know those famous verses, Paritranaya Sadhunam Vinashaya Dushkritam. But more important is Paritranaya Sadhunam. He wants to associate with his devotees. Destroying the miscreants, removing them, he need not have to do that by coming here personally. The loving exchange is far more important principle than him killing the demons. That's very, very secondary. The devotional service and the exchange between him and his devotee is infinitely sweeter than any other quality what Lord describes as about his supremacy. And that Lord is confirming in many ways, in not only in Bhagavad Gita, but obviously in Bhagavatam and all in all the exchanges we see in our scriptures between the Lord and his devotees. So, you yourself descend to propagate the transcendental science of devotional service unto the hearts of the advanced transcendentalists and mental speculators. Very, very relevant verse to what we are discussing today. Who are purified by being able to discriminate between matter and spirit. How then can we women know you perfectly? In fact, she's saying here that yes, that is her humility. It's such a beautiful prayer. She knows him perfectly because of her humility, her purity, and her complete surrender to the Lord. when she says that Vipadasan Shantuta Shashvat Tatra Tatra Jagadguru, give me those miseries more and more, because I will be there with you. You are there with me all the time. When there are miseries, Bhavato Darshanam Yasyat Apunar Bhavadarsanam. She's saying that because you are there, I don't have to see this material world. That is the most beautiful prayer and of Queen Kunti is offering to the Lord. It's obviously it's one of the most famous prayers from the entire Srimad Bhagavatam. And then how to pray, how to follow the devotional service, she gives that as well. Shrinvanti gayanti grananti bhikshnashah smaranti nandanti taveitam dinaha sa eva pashyanti achirena tavakam bhavapravaho paramam padam. Here she is, this is the famous verse, Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Nanda Gopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. She is giving what actually his Leela is, means he is Devaki Nandana. He is the son of Vasudeva and Devaki. Nanda Gopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. The boy of Nanda, another cowherd man of Vrindavan, and the enliver of the cows and the senses. Go means senses and go means cow as well. So, yeah, then she's offering her prayers. It's a very, very poetic prayer. Namah Pankajanabhaya, Namah Pankajamalime, Namah Pankajanetraya, Namaste Pankajangre. What are his features, how he looks like, and where he, apart from his features, there is a very, very important point in these prayers, that whose glance is as cool as lotus, and whose feet are engraved with lotuses. What is his glance? What he says? If we go back to the second verse of Queen Kunti's prayers, Maya Javanika Chandam Atnya Adhokshajam Avyam. Adha means down, Aksha means I. She's just by his glance, he's maintaining his Leela, his activities, his everything. Yeah, because he is God. He's the supreme personality of Godhead. And that is, so if we just meditate on Queen Kunti's prayers, when she's saying that your glance, that glance has a very, very profound, very deep meaning. His feet, as the lotus, and whose feet are engraved with lotuses. What does that mean? Surrendering to the Lord, to his lotus feet, is the sweetest part, is the most rewarding thing anyone can think of in our entire existence. All her prayers are, as Shukdev Goswami says that our acharyas say that Shukdev Goswami, whatever he says, it is in the mood of samadhi bhashya. It is in the mood of a perfect devotional service. And that's what the Queen Kunti's prayers are. If we just read it as it is, still we will enjoy it. I shouldn't say enjoy, we will relish the rasa of the perfection of the words and her mood of devotion and everything. If we meditate further, there will be Guhya Bhashya. There will be the beautiful hidden meanings behind it. Like as we just saw, the glance. The glance has a very deeper meaning, and just looking at something has one meaning. And then the last part is the complete surrender, the mood of pure devotion. That is the Samadhi Bhashya. She's just constantly meditating on the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the exchanges between the pure devotees and the Lord. And that's where she said that earlier verse, Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya. So that is nothing but related to the exchanges between the Lord and his devotees. And that's what she's describing here. Again, in this verse, O Rishikesha, the master of the senses, oh, and the Lord of the lords, you have released your mother Devaki. Again, she's talking about the Leela of the Lord. Yeah. Earlier, what she said, you are the supreme. Everything is happening because of your glance. You are organizing everything of all this, all the Leela of the past times. And then she is talking about the Leela here. Such a perfect, profound understanding our acharyas have given us, that these prayers are so profound, so deep, so powerful for us to meditate on. So, going back to today's verse, here Vyasdev is using the word mudha. Mudha is actually means in Sanskrit, the literal meaning means fool, murkh. But here, why we need the guidance from our acharyas is very important here. If somebody just takes the word as it is, and that person will translate the mudha, that is wives of the Lord, as fools. But no, Prabhupada has given us the idea here. Here, the mudha is not foolishness, it's the simplicity. It is the covering of the Yogamaya that is making the people simple. So they're forgetting that godhood, and it's not in a way that the way we forget. It's a, what do you call? They know that he's the supreme personality of Godhead. He's God. All his devotees know that he's God. But the thickness of the rasa, of the mellows, of the loving exchanges is so powerful that the godhood doesn't mean anything to them. So it's a kind of what do you call, willing suspension of disbelief, we can say, in terms of our material terms, that yes, he's God, but at the same time, that though he may be a God, but for me he is my son, for me he is my lover, for me he is my master. So that has a higher value than his godhood, and Lord loves that. He enjoys that mood of exchanges, the loving exchange, and that is far more pleasing to him than just the mood of opulence. A non-devotee won't understand this particular aspect, the loving exchange between Lord and his devotees, because of his or her conditioning. But when a devotee starts reading this, they relish it more. They get engrossed in reading these pastimes, meditating on these pastimes. And even if the devotee is neophyte, but still they have accepted the supremacy of the Lord, and that's what it matters. That's the most important. Apicheta suduracharo bhajate mam anurvat. Even if the devotee commits all the what do you call, sinful activities, but still the devotee is on a right track. So those are we should not commit, though Lord says that yes, apichetu shuduracharo, but at the same time there is a solace that even if the devotee commits some certain non-devotional activities, still the purification process has started, and that's what the hope is for all of us. Very important point. Now, what is that? Apicheta suduracharo. It's a 9:30. Let's go back. Let's read little bit on this verse. Bhajate mam ananya bhak sadhureva samantavya samyak avyavasito hisaha. Even if one commits the most abominable action, if he is engaged in devotional service, he is to be considered saintly because he is properly situated in his determination. What Srila Prabhupada says in these purports, and our acharyas also say that abominable action means any non-devotional action is considered as abominable because that has a karmic reaction. But that is because of the past conditioning, because of the compulsion of the situations, many other reasons. But when a devotee starts his or her devotional service, the process of surrender has started. And as His Holiness Giriraj Maharaj beautifully explained in one of his lectures, specifically Nectar of Devotion lectures, he says that when one of the students in his class, they asked a question that when person becomes devotee and they take initiation, they start following their Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, regulated devotional service and everything. So their karmic reactions are nullified, and that's what our scriptures say. So what does that mean? And he gave a very beautiful answer. He said, nullified in the sense, Lord arranges those karmic reactions in such a way that the devotee will come closer and closer and closer to the Lord. So the process of surrender, whether the devotee is aspiring for the complete surrender or not, but because Lord's mercy, it will happen. It's an ultimate hope for all of us, and so that's the samay, as Lord says that this is what I want from you. Tamomataha. This is samay yukta tamomataha. That is my opinion, Lord says. It's not the compulsion, but Lord's opinion is an absolute fact. There is nothing beyond that. As Mahaprabhu says, when he instructed Srinath Chakravarti Thakur that Srimad Bhagavatam Pramana Amalam, that famous verse, Aradhya Bhagwan Prajeshatana Stadhama Vrindavanam, Ramya Kachito Upasana Vrajavadhu Vargenaya Kalpita. And the third line of that verse is Srimad Bhagavatam Pramana Amalam Prema Pumartho Mahan. Srimad Bhagavatam will give us that understanding of the supreme love. The first two verses is whom we worship, Aradhya Bhagavan Brajeshatanayas, the Lord of Braja, the most beautiful Lord of Braja. Tadhama Vrindavanam, and what we worship with the Vrindavan Dham, because that is his ultimate abode, that is his most beloved abode. Ramya Kachita Upasana Vrajavadhu Vargenaya Kalpita. Where Mahaprabhu is telling that the damsels, cowherd damsels of Vrajabhumi, their Upasana is beyond any common man can even imagine. Ramya Kachita Upasana, it's so engrossing. Vargenaya Kalpita. That's something beyond anyone can imagine. Srimad Bhagavatam Pramana Amalam. And where we can get the glimpse of that in Srimad Bhagavatam, because it is a spotless Purana. Now the last part, the last line of that verse is Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhor Matamidam Tatra Daraha Napara. That is the opinion of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhor Mata means opinion. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Matam Idam. That is the opinion of Mahaprabhu Chaitanya. Tatra daraha napara. There is nothing beyond that. That's what Srinath Chakravarti Thakur very beautifully he says that at the end. This is the verse from Chaitanya Math Manjusha. So coming back to this point, the Lord's opinion is the ultimate opinion, is the absolute opinion. So when Lord is saying that this is my Yogamaya and this is what is happening as per my directions, and so those queens of Dwarka and their exchanges, it is not like the material exchange between any husband and wife. Here the mood is the queens of Dwarka, whether that is Rukmini or Satyabhama or Jambavati or anybody or any of his queens, they are serving the Lord. Their exchanges with the Lord are in such a way that it is the Lord is pleased, Krishna is pleased, and Krishna is exchanging his reciprocation, exchanging that love with his queens in such a way that queens will be pleased. So it's a loving exchange. One great saint, he said, he has given the description of Vaikuntha in one of the verses. He says, Ani granthopajiviye visheshi lokhiye drishta drishta vijay hoaveji. So how those devotees in Vaikuntha will be? How are they? He says that every one of them is an encyclopedia of knowledge, but not the same. Everyone has their unique set of knowledge. Ani granthopajiviye. They are living grantha. They are living encyclopedias, but everyone has their own individuality. Visheshi lokiye. They're vishesh. They're special. Drishta drishta vijay. And when they will see each other, they will glorify. Oh, such a great personality, such a wonderful devotee. Look at him. So, drishta drishta vijay hoaveji. So that is this is just one verse. He has given the whole list of the description, the big list of what are the features or how the Vaikuntha Dham is. And that's what the exchange is here, as Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport. The wives of Lord Krishna were made to forget the immeasurable glories of the Lord by the internal potency, so that there might not be any flaw of exchange, and they took it for granted that Lord was a hen-pecked husband, always following them in lonely places. This is the part of the exchange. This is not a mundane material exchange between husband and wife. And then Prabhupada says, in other words, even the personal associates of the Lord do not know him perfectly well. So what do the thesis writers or mental speculators know about the transcendental glories of the Lord? So what we understand from here, and if we go back to Bhagavad Gita and what Lord declares in Bhagavad Gita, so let's see that. In 3rd chapter, Lord says that I follow my own rules. And let's come to this. Karma brahmodbhavam vidhi brahmakshara samudbhavam tasmat sarvagatam brahma nityam yadne pratishthitam. Regulated activities are prescribed in the Vedas, and the Vedas are directly manifested from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Consequently, the all-pervading transcendence is eternally situated in the acts of sacrifice. So that means every activity, whether in the material world, in a devotional aspect or in non-devotional, it has to be done as prescribed in the Vedas, and then it will be either Sakam Karma Yoga and then moving towards Nishkam Karma Yoga and Akarma. So that's what Lord is saying here. Then what he says in 322, Name Parthasti Kartavyam Trishu Lokeshu Kinchana Nanavaptam Avaptavyam Varta Evacha Karmani. O son of Pratha, there is no work prescribed for me within all the three planetary systems, nor I am in a want of anything, nor have I a need to obtain anything, and yet I am engaged in prescribed duties. So all of us, we are supposed to follow the footsteps of what Lord has prescribed here. And then he says that, for if I never fail to engage in carefully performing prescribed duties, O Partha, certainly all men would follow my path. And then he gives a very important point here in the 24th verse. If I did not perform prescribed duties, all these worlds will be put to ruination. I would be the cause of creating unwanted population, and I would thereby destroy the peace of all living beings. Very, very important instruction for all of us. He is following all the rules and regulations of this material world perfectly, because the great person is a role model of others, and he is giving that by his own example. Then he gives in 7th verse and in the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Let's go to that. Etaddyonini bhutani sarvani tyupadharya aham krusnasya jagataha prabhava pralayastatra. All created beings have their source in these two natures of all that is material and all that is spiritual. In this word, know for certain that I am both the origin and dissolution. He is establishing the supremacy in the 7th chapter. And let's see some other verses from the 7th chapter. Yeah, deluded by the three modes, Sattva, Raja, Tama, goodness, passion, and ignorance, the whole world does not know me, who am above the modes and inexhaustible. Then in 3rd chapter, he's saying, yes, I am still following everything, but he's establishing his supremacy, that he is beyond all that. And then 15, Namam Dushkritino Mudha Prapadyante Naradama Maya Aparatadhyana Asuram Bhavamasrita. Those foolish people, what Prabhupada was referring here, that mental speculators and thesis writers and all that. And that's what this Lord is giving us. What are the qualities? What type of people those are? Those miscreants are who are grossly foolish, who are lowest among mankind, whose knowledge is stolen by illusion, and who partake of the atheistic nature of demons, do not surrender unto me. They need several reasons not to surrender, and that's where they write theses, all sorts of mental speculation, and some unwanted rubbish. That's what, I'm not saying this, that's what our acharyas say that. And Srila Prabhupada also says this. And we should be avoiding that kind of literature, which will bring us to the point of doubt, whether I'm following the right path or wrong. And then learned leaders, Prabhupada is talking in this particular purport about the Mahajans and the great acharyas here, Madhvacharya, Ramanujacharya, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and all. These are all the Mahajans Prabhupada is mentioning here. So if we go to the another verse from the 7th chapter, all these devotees are undoubtedly magnanimous souls, but he who is situated in knowledge of me, I consider to be just like my own self. Being engaged in my transcendental service, he is sure to attain me, the highest and the most perfect goal. This is the This is again the verse we can meditate on every day, that following the footsteps of Mahajano Yinagatasthapanta, or as Rupa Goswami says in Upadeshamrut, Tattat Karma Pravartana, following the footsteps of our previous acharyas. And then those are all the magnanimous souls Lord is talking about here. But he who is situated in knowledge of me, I consider to be just like my own self, being engaged in my transcendental service. So those Mahajans, they are always engaged in their in the bhakti, in transcendental service. And then if we some of the important points is in this particular context is in, I think, chapter 13, where Krishna says, now he says in the 5th verse, that knowledge of the field of activities and the knower of activities is described by various sages in various Vedic writings. It is especially presented in Vedanta Sutra with all reasoning as to cause and effect. And before that, this is the 13th chapter. Before that, Lord has established that He is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, and then He says that He talks about the qualities of the great personalities: humility, pridelessness, and so on. Even-mindedness amid pleasant and unpleasant events. That's the Yam Hinagathente Te Purusham Purusharshabha, or before that, Matara Sparshasthu Kaunteya. And then Lord says after this 13th verse, he talks about Bhairantascha Bhutanam Charam Charameva Sukshmatva Tadavidneyam Durastham Chantikit. I am there in the minutest of the minute and the biggest of the biggest. Everywhere He is. And then He's saying here that His hands, legs, eyes, heads, it's everywhere. As we know, super soul in our heart. But He understands, He knows everything. And that's how we all are connected to each other, every living entity. And He's saying here, the super soul is the original source of all senses, yet He is without senses. That means He is without material senses. He is unattached, although He is the maintainer of all living beings. He transcends the modes of nature, and at the same time, He is the master of all the modes of material nature. So, here, this is the what do you call the tattva, or the principle of supremacy, that He is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then the Leela, even He is God, still He has His loving exchanges with the devotees. And that's where the path of bhakti begins. Understanding that He is God, as Prabhupada, you must have seen in many of his interviews, that the objective of our movement is to introduce people that yes, we all are related to God eternally, to know God, to love God, and have the loving exchanges between God. Sambandha is establishment, the relationship between God and us. Abhideya is how to go back to Him, and then Prayojana, when you go back, then how to have those eternally loving exchanges. And that's what the 64 limbs of devotion in Vaidhi Bhakti, the regulated devotional service given in the Nectar of Devotion by Srila Rupa Goswami Pada. Then in this particular chapter, this is a very, very beautiful verse. Upadrashtanumantacha bharta bhokta maheshwaraha parmatmeti chapyuto dehesmin purushaha para. This is actually the confirmation of bhoktaram yadnyatapasam sarvalokam maheshwaram sradam sarvabhutanam jnatmaman shantimurachari. Yet in this body there is another, a transcendental enjoyer, who is the Lord, the supreme proprietor who exists as the overseer and permitter and who is known as the super soul. So Prabhupada talks about the Atma, the nature of the Atma and Paramatma. What is that exchange within our own body? The Paramatma is the supreme enjoyer. He is giving, yes, you can do this, you cannot do that. Bharata Bhokta Maheshwara, Paramatmeti Chapyukto, Dehesmin Purushah Para. So that's the very important verse. I think the 17th verse was the one we talked earlier. Bhairantascha Bhutanam Charam Charamevacha. And then towards the last few verses of this 13th chapter, Lord gives the lot of beautiful analogies, like this 33rd verse. He says, Yatha Sarvagatam Saumya Sokshmya Akasham Nopalipyate Sarvatra Avasthito Dehe Yathatma Tathatma Nopalipyate. The sky, due to its subtle nature, does not mix with anything, although it is all-pervading. Similarly, the soul situated in Brahma vision does not mix with the body, though situated in that body. That's the it's the corroborative verse of Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma Nashochati Nikamshati Samah Sarveshu Bhuteshu Madbhaktim Lavate Param. So that's the verses from Bhagavad Gita we can relate to this particular verse, today's discussions. And as we saw, the supremacy of the Lord, his godhood becomes secondary. It's when it comes to the loving exchange between Krishna, the Supreme Lord, Krishna himself, and his pure devotees. That is far more sweeter and relishable to the Lord than just in the mood of opulence. Yes, he is the Sheshashayi Bhagwan, and then he has that glance, and then all others are just extending prayers to him. He prefers more intimate, loving exchanges in different rasas, and that's what Prabhupada is giving us in this particular verse, the 5 ways: as a proprietor, master, friend, son, and lover. And in each of these pastimes, he plays fully by the potency of Yogamaya, the internal potency. And that's what the importance of sweet, loving relations is in on the path of bhakti, among the devotees, and ultimately that is because of our sweet relationship with the Supreme Lord. So that's what I thought of discussing here. Are there any points, any comments, any questions, or any additions anyone would like to have? Silence, no questions, no discussions.
Hare Krishna, Prayagraj,
Krishna,
Prabhu. Please accept my humble obeisances.
Same.
Prabhuji, thank you very much for sharing all these verses, and that's why I like visual. It's so lovely to follow with you all these slokas and things.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing the verses. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Beautiful, a wonderful class as usual.
Thank you, Mataji, for your.
Thank you for sharing all your knowledge with us. Hare Krishna.
Krishna, Krishna. Yeah. Any other questions, or are there any questions or any discussions? Anyone would like to add something which I must have missed? No?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Nice class, Prabhuji. Thank you. Great
Thank you.
knowledge here and many examples that I think Grihastha should follow. Even the Lord has so many wives. He was detached. He didn't show that. So if people are saying that okay, we have like 50 years and we need to get detached, they don't need to leave the house, so they don't need to tell that I am detached. They do
Yes.
it internally. Externally they show that they care for the family and they are there for the wife and the children, but internally they should be like detached and then get attached to the Lord. And the Lord is showing this here. Very nice example, very nice explanation, and lots of knowledge that you have shared here, as Mataji said. Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Mataji, for your
Hare
encouragement.
Krishna. Hare Krishna.
As the very essential point, Mataji, you highlighted right now, internal detachment and how that is, that's again, if we go back to Queen Kunti's prayers, she says that let my ties, my attachment with the Vrishnis and everyone, all the great lineages, all the great families, let that be cut, and let me be your, let me surrender unto you. Let's see that verse.
Yeah, because she was bound by in both the two lineage, like the Vrishnis
Yes,
and
yes.
the Pandavas and the Kauravas, like, so she was on both sides. So she wanted to just cut off that link, and then she could just focus on the Lord. That's why she said. And in her stuti, she says, "Let me just go like the rivers are merging in the ocean, and the ocean is not agitated at all."
Yes, yes. You are the prophet translator, and you descend to leaders of cows, brahmanas, and devotees, and you are the preceptor of the entire universe. No, I think it's before that. Yeah. So after that verse, she says that as the Mother Ganga forever flows to the sea without hindrance, let my attraction be constantly drawn unto you without being diverted to anyone else. Before that, she says, let my attachment to these great dynasties of Rishni and others, let that be, let that be severed. Yeah. And then let me be my only attraction be only you. And that's what she says in this particular verse. Yeah, this is another very beautiful, beautiful verse. Atha Vishvesha Vishwatman Vishwamurte Sokeshu me Sneha Pashmyam Chindim Drudham Pandushu Vrishnishu. O Lord of the universe, soul of the universe, O personality of the form of the universe, please therefore sever my tie of affection for my kinsmen, the Pandavas and the Vrishnis. Is she saying I don't want to have association with the devotees? No, that's not the point. What she's saying here is those great dynasties, the Pandavas and Vrishnis and my kinsmen, that attachment is something, if that is a hindrance on the path of devotion, let that be severed. That's what she's saying here. My only objective is is the complete surrender at your lotus feet, and that's what the subsequent verse she's saying here. So thank you, Indulekha Mataji, for bringing that very important point. Thank you very much.
Yes, Prabhuji, and we see that Mother Kunti, she has been with the sons all the time. It doesn't matter in the forest or anywhere. She was very attached to her sons. She supported her sons all the way through. But now she sees that, okay, my sons have established and they are established, they are okay. I need to like cut the tie with them. But she's not showing it. She's not leaving them and going to the forest. She's still there. She is outwardly showing that she is there, but inwardly she wants to cut that tie. That is how we should live as well.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it will be very difficult at the time of leaving this body. Very, very difficult.
Very
Yeah.
true.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mandari. Hare Krishna. Any other discussions or any other points to talk about? No? If not, then we will stop here. And let's these great prayers be our meditation. And the most important is having that association of each other, of the devotees, is very, very, very crucial point here. Because on our own, if we think that we can make an advancement, that's the biggest illusion. And then we will be true Muda, means as per the literal meaning of that. And I should talk about myself, not about anyone else. But thank you very much. So we'll stop. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha
Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank
Hare
you,
Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Jai.
Thank you.
Jai, Jai.
Thank you.